All right, 6:02 p.m. We'll call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Education. Please silence devices and we'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Sue, any additions or deletions to note on the agenda? All right, is there a motion to accept the minutes of the March 6th meeting? Jenny, second. Jackie, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we will move right into the winter sports presentation. Jen Murphy, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So we'll do another brief review for our winter sports season for 23-24. I know we have a busy agenda this evening, so I'll try to move quickly. I'll just highlight a few items, and then I'll leave you some time to read through some of our slides. We'll also have our winter sports article that will be posted tomorrow. I've been working with Michelle Conti on that. That goes into a little bit more detail with additional photos from this winter season. It's not going. There we go. To start off in review, we had 214 student athletes participate with all three levels for our teams. We offered 6 different sports and 17 teams in total. We'll start with varsity wrestling. I wanted to congratulate them on their league championship from this winter. They had a really successful season. Just highlighting specifically 2 student athletes that really had a tremendous year. Jaden Acom qualified as a 9th grade student for the state tournament down at MVP Arena. So obviously a great accomplishment there. And Olivia Ortiz as a senior, placing first in the Section 2 all-girls tournament, as well as 5th in the New York State Invitational out in Syracuse. Boys varsity basketball. Girls varsity basketball. Next up, boys varsity swimming and diving. They had a really great season this year. They went 5-0 undefeated for their dual meets. They also finished 3rd out of 13 teams in their division at sectionals. Girls varsity cheer. Boys varsity bowling. Girls varsity bowling. Boys and girls indoor track and field. We had an increase in participation numbers with indoor this year, which was great. I also wanted to give a shout out to Dominic Paluja. He's been a really successful track athlete. Earned a Section 2 championship title in the long jump with 20 feet 3 inches, and also broke the school record in the 45 meters with 5.82. I wanted to congratulate all of our Winter Scholar athlete teams. So this again is 75% of the roster, needs to have a 90 or above average. And those individuals that are 90 or above will receive a NISFA Scholar Athlete pin. Our goal is looking at next winter. Yes.
Community partnership with our youth sports organizations.
Yes.
How is that done? What are we doing to collaborate with them or include them in our school community and our sports teams?
Sure.
Futuristically, I guess.
Sure. I work with the youth sports organizers or the administrators of those programs and help schedule facilities usages. So for soccer, Ravena Youth Basketball, our local baseball leagues, I just coordinate with all those folks to make sure that they have facilities usage or anything that they need in terms of kind of working towards building our programs.
So is it an option to explore allowing them to have tournaments here? Because I know that that has been turned down in the past year, and that would seem like something we'd want to encourage them to do, to have people into our schools, see our community, interact with our sports athletes. I know of two specific situations where that was not allowed, and I would just kind of hope that we could allow that to happen and potentially allow them to practice in times when we're not in session if coverage is available to allow them to.
We can definitely look at that. I'm not certainly the only one that makes decisions with facilities. I kind of have to reach out to everyone, include my building principals and the O&M department to make sure there's coverage and availability and kind of look at all the other things that are going on in the building. But if there was a conflict, I'm happy to look back into that or talk with you specifically about the certain event that didn't
Okay.
work out.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to, again, revisit the idea for merged programs. I know back last year I had mentioned looking specifically at boys swimming and diving. I know that was shared with all of you. The April 1st deadline for girls swimming and diving is coming up. I wanted to thank Dr. Bailey for sharing all of that with you. That is just something that we wanted to try to revisit and explore. Girls swimming was merged with Coxsackie Athens a few years back, so we are looking at possibly trying to work with their school district as well as the Greenville Central School District for that merged program idea. I have been reaching out with other athletic directors specifically in regards to their merged swim and dive programs. We have Chalmont and Mahonison, we have Amsterdam and Broad Alban. Those are just a few folks. Voorheesville and Guilderland, those were a couple of school districts and athletic directors I reached out that have had a very successful program with those merged swim and dive programs. So I appreciate your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to that merger application, but I did want to put that on there, and that's specifically the first merged program application I was interested in pursuing for this coming school year this fall.
Would benefit from that?
I think we're holding pretty strong with a lot of our other programs numbers-wise, but certainly swimming and diving has been a tough one. We literally have students running from one end to the pool, just finishing an event, running back to do the next one. It's just very hard. It's a lot on the kids. We've had 6 girls this fall on the swim team. Last year we had 5. So as you can imagine, when we're facing teams closer to 20 kids, and the competition that we're facing has been really challenging, really tough. So those are just the 2 really that I was looking at for boys and girls swim.
I think it's a great idea to help, especially with other districts who don't have the same facilities that we are fortunate to have. Will there be, I didn't see anything in this, and forgive me if I overlooked it, but will the other schools be also contributing funding to help us with maintenance and coaching for those teams? I mean, obviously the pool has considerable maintenance to it. Will they also be providing funding towards our costs of maintaining those?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I do know that they would be responsible to transport their students here, so that would be their responsibility. We would be the host school, the host coaches, the host athletic director, so all of those things would run under our umbrella still. But as far as the maintenance, I haven't gotten to that piece yet, but I'm happy to get back to you on that.
No problem. I was just curious. Thank you.
It's a good question. Thank you.
With 2 other districts. Who decides on like uniforms, colors they wear, things like that? Is that, I mean, I don't think we wouldn't be competing under RCS. It would be some type of merged program.
Right, so in the application, it said the team would be, or if all the schools agree and we decide to move forward, it would be RCS, Coxsackie, Athens, Greenville. So sometimes the host school stays with their swim uniforms or whatever the uniform is at the host school. Other schools decide to do a combined uniform. I know the swimsuits at Hannes and Chalmont, they do say both on there. So that would be something we would need to revisit if we all decided to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you.
So how does this work as far as meets? So some of the meets would be here?
We would
In
have all
this-
the host meets because the other schools we're
Okay.
looking to merge with just don't have the aquatics
right.
facilities.
And then what about away meets? Would we be busing students from the other districts, or
They
how
would
would
need to
transport?
transport themselves here, their district, and then we would transport them to the away meets.
Okay.
And then they would be able to obviously sign out with a parent to leave the away meet.
Okay. So tonight, we're being asked to approve merger of the girls program only?
Just the girls.
Okay, and then the boys program is going to be
That deadline
evaluated
is
further?
September 1st. So we have a little bit more time there.
Okay.
Okay.
For the boys' team, do you anticipate it would be the same districts?
Sorry?
For the boys' team, do you anticipate it would be the same districts as are proposed for the girls' team? It would also be Greenville and Coxsackie?
Yes. And I had reached out to their athletic directors who are now discussing it with their administrative teams and their Board of Education.
Great.
Have there been any concerns expressed by anybody affiliated with our swim team now about a merger?
No, I have not heard any feedback that would be negative.
Okay. Are there any, I think we understand the pros of this. Are there any cons that we should be aware of before we vote?
I think it would be something to keep in mind with the name of the team and sort of what the teams represent as far as their uniforms. I think that would be something, but I'm having a hard time finding something negative if we're giving other students in other districts an opportunity they may not have been able to have. I know we do have students that swim in our the Starfish Club that have showed interest. So just trying to partner with our neighboring school districts, I think is positive, giving kids other opportunities and just kind of boosting what we're able to offer in the competitive realm for our swim teams.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
No, I mean, the only comment I would make, it seems like this probably isn't a concern if we're going down this road, but I wouldn't want to see anybody here who's participating prevented from participating in the future because it might be more selective and competitive with the three teams together. So I just want to make sure that the opportunities remain for RCS students to participate in that sport and not be removed from it because of a merger.
I completely understand. They're definitely not big numbers that I've heard of. It's not like we're seeing maybe 10 to 15 students from other districts. It would be a very small handful.
Yeah, okay.
How long does the merger last?
Is
They're
it-
annual.
Okay.
So we would, if we were approved for this, then we would just that's a great question. Just
Great.
revisit it next year if it worked. If
Awesome.
it didn't work, we can just revisit.
Try it for 1 year.
Yes.
You can answer them, or the high school principals, but it just was brought to my attention. Parents just were curious of two things. One, coming up this spring, will the library be accessible for children 10th period? Is that still a no? Do they have to, like students that need a place to go before their game, or if it's an away game, is the library still a no for this spring season, or?
Has
I
it been a
believe they
no in the
still need
past?
to be with a teacher during that 10th period time.
Because there used to
Principals?
be where you could come to the library with your sports team, so.
We have that available right after 10th period, so the students can go and be with their teachers 10th, and then we'll have an athletic study hall chaperone in the library right after that.
So you'll have that? Okay.
Yes.
Maybe that was the question. And then the new locker rooms being closed in the morning, if a child for some reason needs to get their sports equipment at a certain time, like somebody was asking, how does that work? Is it only like right after 10th you can get your equipment, or right before 10th you can get your equipment, or what's the, they were just questioning.
At 2:40 when the bell rings, they can get their equipment. If they need to get it prior to that, they would come to the office, say they had to leave on an emergency.
Okay,
They would come to the office.
all right, good to know. Okay, thanks. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have our next presentation in the series of budget presentations. Tonight is curriculum, instruction, and student safety.
Thanks, Brian. So thanks again for providing us the time to go through this series of budget presentations. Tonight, we'll be making recommendations around curriculum and instruction and health and safety that do carry a fiscal impact. So during the presentation back on February 28th, we identified areas of strength and some areas of need. And we highlighted from that presentation, really some of the highlights from that presentation was intended to provide short and long-term action steps that will address those areas of need that didn't call for additional funding. So we put an emphasis on professional learning and efficient use of existing resources to address those areas of need. So tonight, we want to return to those priority areas of need and provide staffing and resource recommendations that do carry a fiscal impact. These recommendations fall under the Board of Ed goals for academics and culture and climate. Our recommendations for emotional and physical safety, those needs are really aligned with the Board of Ed goals around culture and climate, being able to provide an inclusive and safe and supportive environment that promotes a school community where we respect and bring out the best in each other. I'm going to practice that. And then the second recommendations for staffing really reflect academic and program needs that are aligned with the board goal for academics. So making sure that we are providing a dynamic and personally relevant learning opportunities that drive curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, and the development of the whole person.
So as Jean mentioned, the three goal areas for the board. We're not going to address communication tonight, although in my report I'll talk about our communication meeting that occurred recently. But in an effort to try and touch those things that we spoke about 3 weeks ago, that we believe those areas where we're underperforming or we haven't yet figured out a solution to get to those better outcomes. We know we want to prioritize early literacy, but also literacy K-12, and ensure that we're helping our staff professionally develop. And really the last two bullets, they're kind of tied together. What we recognize is, and Jean has said it 3 weeks ago, in a lot of ways, the skills that we've developed in the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years for some of us are not necessarily the skills that are working successfully with students who have come through this very weird span of time. And I will argue that both the adults and the students have suffered trauma. It's been a little bit of a puzzle, and it's not just us, it's all schools trying to figure out how to get kids back to that place where they were before the pandemic. And I think in the end, I don't know that we will ever get them in the place where they were before the pandemic. This is our new reality. So we will be working with staff and ourselves around trauma-informed instruction and restorative practices, trying to figure out the best way to help students get to where they are right now to where we need them to be. We showed slides about class size in our presentation from 3 weeks ago. This time we chose to disaggregate them by building, so you can see the elementary buildings apart from each other. You can see that the enrollment in Becker is pretty much static between last year and this year. And you follow those classes diagonally. Pre-K becomes K, K becomes first, etc. across. You can see there are some fluctuations in size, but none that are none that are too great. And still, we talked about how we have valued small class sizes in the district, and these still represent class sizes that are, in the terms of the capital district, relatively small. Yeah.
So I noticed on both A.W. Becker and Peter B. that both of them, we have gone down in the number of sections. Can you explain why we'd be going down in the number of sections in both schools?
Sure. At Becker, we have a retirement, and we've chosen to reallocate that FTE to increasing our skills program, an 812 program, adding an 812 program. Yeah.
Okay,
A little bit, it's hard to, thank you, sorry.
I'll try and stand shorter too.
so I kind of have,
I didn't hear that answer. I don't know if
oh, I'm
anyone else
sorry,
either.
go ahead, you can
What
repeat.
was
I
the
said,
reallocation to?
Creation of an 812 program, a skills program for our students with disabilities.
In which building?
I think it's in Peter B. It's at Becker.
Okay, so then can you explain the reduction at Peter B?
Sure. Next slide.
Well,
Well,
be-
no.
before we do that, so is that, a full-time, a new full-time position for that program?
It would be, we're taking the position, the FTE, from the retirement of one of the general ed teachers.
Okay.
And creating an additional 812 skills level class for our students with disabilities.
With a new hire? There'll be a new hire for that
Yeah,
program?
we would be filling the empty vacancy left by the gen ed teacher with a special ed teacher.
Okay. What grade was the retirement from? So which grade level is going to see a section reduced?
Fourth grade, I believe, is the teacher. I don't know how they've chosen to allocate the staff in order to mitigate the class size.
Okay.
At Peter B, it's certainly fourth grade. I've heard people have reached out to me about concerns about the fourth grade size becoming substantially larger than what the third grade currently is. And it looks like there's a similar sort of change in the current second grade class at A.W. Becker. I mean, I know it's 5 kids, but when you're adding 5 kids to 16, I mean, that's 30% you're increasing that class size by. I mean, I'm personally more concerned about Peter B, but only because I have a child in that grade. But that's a pretty big jump. And we're looking at the kids who, the second graders this year are the kids who were in pre-K the pandemic year. And the third graders are the ones who, the current third graders are the ones who are in kindergarten, which are, times that are really substantial for their social development. And they went through, obviously, a particularly difficult year in an age that's more problematic.
I think the fourth graders now were in kindergarten when COVID hit, because my son was in kindergarten when he got sent home, and he's in fourth grade.
Right, but the year that was like completely,
Oh,
like the whole
Okay, okay.
COVID year, right,
Okay.
the year that it, right, that
I
would have
got
been,
you.
yes, you're correct.
Also, it's important to note that our kindergarten numbers are always a projection. We have fewer than 72 pre-K students enrolled in our district. Sorry, we have fewer than 72 students enrolled in our district currently, and then, of course, students who are in other early childhood programs or at home may or may not register, for kindergarten. So we're
Right.
projecting the class size in that.
I'm going to share Jackie's concern, especially if Peter B is the school that is underperforming more significantly on state testing and assessment data, to have their third grade class jump by 5, right, or no?
Yeah, it's basically the same jump, it's 16 to 21, Peter B,
Okay,
for the third going into fourth.
So what, I'm
Okay.
sorry, what is the new skills-based program that we're putting in place? I don't think I understand what that is exactly, and I don't see it later in the presentation. Just so I understand exactly what we're doing. Who's it going to serve? What type of program is it going to be? And why are we doing that instead of replacing the teacher who's retiring?
Sure. I'll have Colleen speak.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Colin.
So to speak about the 812 skills program, I was going to mention it briefly in my presentation in a few minutes, but just to give you a brief overview, we've seen an increase of students coming in from preschool needing intensive supports. We currently have one skills track at A.W. Becker, where we have 3 skills classrooms We have an 811 in our K2 continuum, an 811 for our second and third grade, and then our 4-5 is a 12-1. But it's one continuum that typically we try to program students with very like needs within that continuum. So what we're seeing is we're starting to see a divide. We're seeing students coming in that have more intensive needs and supports. We have a lot of students diagnosed with autism coming in. We have a lot of students using augmentative communication devices, so AAC devices, meaning that most times they're nonverbal or they're using a device to communicate, and programming those students with some of our skills students that we've had in the past that are mostly, academically delayed, but significantly. Programming those two students together isn't the most appropriate thing to do. So we're looking at a way, and with that being said, let me mention that when we've had students come in the past that have had those needs and we've struggled to meet the higher needs of those students, we've been looking to place them out of district. There's a few problems with that. It is really, really hard to find out-of-district programming right now, and the last thing that we want to do is have students on home instruction while we're waiting for placement. And it's always our goal to program for our own students at RCS for as long as we possibly can. So with the opportunity for space coming from the retirement of our one teacher at A.W. Becker, we haven't been able to really consider it before because space has always been a concern. So with the space becoming available and the reallocation of that general education teacher to a special ed position, we are able to really break up that existing continuum into two different tracks, a 12-1 skills track and then a more intensive 812, where we'll be able to service students with more needs and keep them in district.
So are you suggesting that you're going to go 811 for K, 811 for second grade, and then add this 812 for fourth and fifth?
Nope, so we're gonna do two strands. We're gonna do a 12-1 typical skills classroom for a K2 room and a 3-5 room. And then we're gonna offer a K2, 812, more intensive skills room, and a 3-5 intensive skills room.
That would be the 8-1
812.
for the K1, and then 8-1 for the,
No, 812 so
For
it's
both.
gonna be one track for 12-1 for academic skills, if we'll call it that. And then the more intensive strand would be 812 for K2, and then an 812 for 3-5. So it's the same support.
okay. And are you going to be having the children travel between the two buildings if they need the support? Or is this solely for children that attend Becker?
It's for any student who qualifies for that support through their needs. So if it is a student in the Peter B. catchment, but do require that level of support, we would be looking. Correct.
Say again?
There's no skills class at Peter B.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's just ICM?
We have integrated co-teaching, and then we have a few options for our consultant teacher options. We have LASSO, which is for students who present with communication and language needs associated with autism.
Okay.
And then we do have an ICM
The LASSO is only integrated, correct?
It's a consultant teacher model, as is ICM and co-teaching. So we used to have it K2 skills LASSO. The problem with that was that we did not have a 3-5. So at that point, those students were either integrated into general education, into consultant teacher, or we had to move them after second grade to A.W. Becker. Any other questions regarding the 812? Just something else to mention while we're talking about it. We're hoping that I already have the needs in that room. It's an 812. I think we typically right now have 5 students who were projected for these classrooms, so we're a little bit under. But I do want to mention it also, everybody in the capital region, we're not the only ones that are looking for placements for our students. A local school district has reached out and we're considering cross-contracting. Of course, we need to ensure that we can meet the needs of our own students first, but cross-contracting is also a possibility with this continuum option.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
So often, I would say once a week, I get emails, the whole CSC, all the district directors get emails of people searching for placements. We're blessed, I would say, with a pretty large continuum here at RCS. Other school districts aren't as blessed. And they're looking for placements for students that they cannot program for within their own district. So they ask all of the local surrounding districts, does anybody have, say, a 812 autism classroom for a 5th grade student or something like that? So there's opportunities to cross-contract.
So how does that work when a child who is in district suddenly qualifies for that service and we've given that spot to another child?
I think that our teachers do a really great job of kind of understanding where the needs are and making those recommendations appropriately. Where that might come into play, Jenny, is if we have transfer students or something like that that comes in. I think our understanding is we want to leave a little bit of room. We would never want to bring in 3 students and then deny our own students a program. But again, they have to fill a certain criteria to qualify for a
Fair.
classroom like that, because it is.
So you know how many preschoolers coming in you anticipate will need this program?
Yes.
And it's 5?
So remember, it's a K-2 room, so it's not only incoming preschoolers, it's looking at the needs. And then, like I said, we're trying to more appropriately divide our current skills classroom into these 2 different strands.
So what will the skills numbers now look like?
I don't have all the numbers in front of me. We're under in all of it's a
that
12-1 and it's an 8-1. We are under right now, not significantly. We don't, we have more than 4 or 5 kids in the room. But I want to say, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm happy to get them to you.
Is there potential for bringing back some of the kids who are now out of district?
Yes, there is. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you say, Mom?
I asked if there was potential for children who are currently out of district placement to be able to be brought back in if we're opening up these spots.
Okay. Thank you.
So how many staff members are in a kindergarten classroom? There's the primary teacher and then who else?
If it is a gen ed classroom,
Yeah.
it's just the teacher. If it is a co-teaching classroom, there's a co-teacher and sometimes a TA for a portion of the time, co-teaching classroom. And we have the MAT class, the mixed grade in Peter B, who does K1. Someone's got to know. Wait, where I was going with this is, what everything Colleen said and more is slated to be discussed at the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting, which will allow a little bit more detailed explanation, enrollment, and things like that. So,
In the what?
Say that
When's it
again?
going to be discussed?
Say that again, Jenny?
When are you discussing all the things that you just
At the
mentioned?
Curriculum and Instruction meeting, Jean had mentioned that. I asked if there was a slide for what Colleen was speaking about, and Jean said it's slated to be as part of the Curriculum and Instruction meeting that's coming up.
In April?
Well, our elementary focus is, our elementary focus is in May, so I had invited Colleen and Kate to join us for that meeting. Plus, it will also, at that time, we'll have an opportunity to look at the results from the special ed audit, speaking to that. And at that time, more of the annual reviews will be completed also, so we'll have a better idea of numbers, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Can I ask a question though? Sorry, let me cut you off. That's in May, but we're talking about budgeting for this
Yeah.
now. So I would think we would kind of need the information now, or as soon as possible, to decide if this is the route to go, right?
That's a good question. The reason why we didn't include this in the budget presentation is because the usage of a retirement didn't have a budgetary impact. There are so many things that happen within the development of the budget that you may replace this with that because it's programmatically appropriate. That is not. People are still having night sweats of a 3-hour presentation that we did last year around instruction.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why we haven't gone down everything. Like we're going to move a 4th grade teacher to 3rd grade in this building. We're going to reallocate an English teacher from the middle school to the high school. We're not including that because it didn't have the budgetary impact. That's why this was not as intimately included in the presentation.
But I would argue it has a programmatic impact on the academic support our students are receiving. If
Absolutely.
we're jumping up class sizes from 16 to 21 in what could arguably be a needy age, that seems a concern.
Yep, and there's more in this presentation to help talk through how we expect to ensure that we're delivering a quality instruction.
Okay.
Because we obviously know too that any change in class numbers, whether it be drastically higher or lower, has an impact on what happens in the classroom.
So I'm sorry, I want to go back because I'm not sure that I caught it if it was responded to. So that covers one of the schools, why we're cutting down on sections. Why is the elementary school
I'm
losing a
only on
section?
the 4th slide. Here's the 5th slide.
We could spend all day on these slides.
So same thing at Peter B. There's a reduction of one section. This is the reduction of a position that's being paid for through the last of the COVID money grants. So we had an additional person working in an elementary gen ed position through the COVID money that we're not going to put in the general fund. That's why the change in sections at Peter B.
What grade level is that position at?
4th grade, I believe.
Correct. Yeah, which is why you see the significant jump between 3rd and 4th. Last year's, or current 3rd grade is 16 kids, and next year they will be at 21. My own experience has been that there's a lot of behavioral issues at that age, more than I saw at my older child at that age with the children, which I think, again, COVID is, it is what it is. They had unfortunate timing being in kindergarten during that. But I think it has made a significant impact on those kids, and I do not like that jump. For either school, honestly. I think it's gonna be detrimental to our kids.
So do we have a current employee serving that position right now that's not going to have a job there next year because of this change?
Correct. They were hired with the expectation their position would end in June 30 of 2024.
I really don't like the idea of seeing the majority of class sizes increase across the board here.
And I apologize, Jesse did his presentation. I am sorry I interrupted you, Mike. Jesse did his presentation by the numbers, and it suited well to be able to stop and ask a question about transportation, and then ask a question about O&M. What I would ask of you, if you could just jot down your questions, because there's more to discuss, and some of it might unfold in a way that will help explain. Because I agree with you, Mike, this number by itself is daunting. It's shocking, it's daunting, it's 5 students in both buildings going from 3rd to 4th. It is a big difference. So we're going to talk through what our plans are to help remediate that in lieu of having an additional section and returning to pre-pandemic sectioning in lieu of that in order to ensure that we're hitting the mark, doing the things that we need to do. And I agree that we're all, we're looking at it, it's a big jump. This was all just a trick to have Jean come to the microphone and answer the questions. I'm just kidding. Middle school numbers we displayed last time. Again, at least this time, you'll be able to see the difference between this year going into next year. You actually see some reductions and some increases in class size at the middle school. And the high school, as I said, from the state report card, these are the numbers from 21-22. It's not publicly available data yet, but I can tell you that those class sizes are still accurate to about where we are right now.
That's okay. So our focus in the budget development process and working with the principals and at the district office level, we really wanted to allocate resources that address our greatest student needs. There's always going to be a lot for us to consider, so we tried to prioritize those needs that exist in literacy development, especially for our youngest learners, special education, and social emotional health of all students. Because we want to continue to refine and redesign teaching and learning that has resulted from coming out of the pandemic. We talked a couple weeks ago about the impact of having a set of skills for the students who have been in front of you for many years and using those tools to teach kids. And we are different as educators, and the students that are coming to us are different. And it's hard for an educator to give up some of the things that we've been doing without having a new tool set. And that was one of the emphasis from the earlier presentation around professional development and supporting teachers in making those shifts. So we really wanted to identify or align with the board goals around improving academic outcomes and our school culture and climate. So we framed our priorities with these 4 targeted areas. So I'm gonna, for this budget proposal, and we're thinking about new positions that do have a fiscal impact, these are the key positions that we're looking to include in the budget moving forward. So an elementary speech therapist, an elementary special education coach, a middle school ELA teacher, and a secondary social worker. And really, when you think about that, until Jesse shows you the numbers next week, we're looking at roughly, when you're talking about 4 positions, it's about $400,000, give or take. I like to work in base 10, I told Jesse this morning. So as we go through the presentation, I will provide some additional rationale and some information to help you understand why these key positions were prioritized and why we are recommending that they be included in the budget. So looking at elementary staffing, as far as new positions, we're looking to add a speech therapist and a special education coach. And I'm going to turn things over to Colleen to talk a little bit more in detail about both of those. But when we were thinking about prioritizing early literacy development and the idea about focusing on emergent language skills was something that would be addressed in hiring an additional speech therapist. And we also know that we have some efficiencies, and we want to look at efficiencies, but also building out our special ed programming to meet the needs of the changing population that we have, and having opportunities, I think, to bring students back that we have had to put in out of district placements is something that's really important to us. So with the speech therapist, and I don't want to steal Colleen's thunder, but we have seen identification rates for students with disabilities increasing and the need for related services. So this position would allow us to meet mandated needs, support the use of those communication devices that Colleen was speaking about with the more intensive needs, and allow for RTI speech for our primary grades. We've been talking a lot in meetings around preschool speech support, and I really want to emphasize thinking about emergent literacy through the lens of pre-K, K, first grade, and beyond, but really zoning in over the next couple of years over pre-K and K. And then with the special education coach, we've had a new position this year that we've seen tremendous success with in year 1, and we want to capitalize and build on those successes. And what's important about the special education coach is that it's something that's going to be able to provide support across both schools for a wide range of teachers, because we know that we have a very robust continuum of services for students with disabilities, and this will allow us to start supporting the teachers within those programs. So I'm going to turn things over to Colleen. Sure.
Quick question first. Can you spell out what RTI stands for?
Oh, response to intervention.
Thank you.
All right, so Jean may have stole my thunder a little bit, but I will go into a little bit more detail about the proposal for the additional speech position at the elementary level. So as she mentioned, we are seeing an increase in speech and language needs, and after looking at the data and reflecting on those needs, we want to be able to cover all of the mandated services, so both IEP, 504, all of our response to intervention services, so that's like our SLIC program, if you've heard, at the K level. And then in addition to that, we also, as you know, have our full day pre-K this year. So we want to make sure that we're able to provide supports and services to pre-K as well. And what it looks like at pre-K right now is we're providing weekly UPK specials. We are providing weekly push-ins. And then we're also providing preschool evaluations for the preschool committee on special education. Which I want to thank everybody because we did add a speech therapist this past school year to help with that. And since the addition of that therapist and the psychologist, we are in 100% compliance with our preschool timelines this year so far. So as I mentioned previously when I was talking about the increased need, especially in our skills classrooms, we have seen a shift and we've seen a need for more intensive language support. So next year, we have 12 students who will be using that AAC or the augmented communication, which I mentioned earlier, meaning that they are using that to communicate not only within their classroom and with their providers, but it's also support that oftentimes goes home with families. So the level of need that is required to support that type of programming and device is pretty intense. And then on top of that, supporting the implementation and use of the AAC, most of these students also get a high intensity of speech services, direct services. So that is why, we are asking for the additional speech provider at the elementary level. And you can see a general outline of, what we think right now of what it may look like. But knowing that we're in the middle of annual review season, we know some of our kindergarten students that may be in placements right now, but we don't know all. So as of right now, this is what we're generally thinking, how the positions might be used next year. Okay. So I'd like to take a moment to speak about the instructional coach that we're proposing for the elementary level. Our trend data over time shows that our students with disabilities are underperforming compared to other students in similar schools. Last year, we added a secondary instructional coach and transition coordinator at the secondary level, and I feel that it has already been extremely impactful on how we support teachers, students, and families. So I would like to share a few highlights of that impact from the instructional coach so far this year. So we track, myself and the instructional coach, all of their contact time. So anytime that they are working directly with teachers, with families, parents, with building administration, or pushing into classrooms and providing support. So in September, this instructional coach had 75 contacts. In October, 87. November, 79. December, 69. January, 92. February, 82. And in March, as of March 11th, we had 33 contacts. So in addition to this direct contact time, we have also been able to provide quite a bit of additional support to the department as a whole. And a few examples of this are creating beginning of the year feedback surveys and meeting one-on-one with all of our special education teachers and related service providers to identify department needs. He has created a special education resource library. He offers optional monthly special education collaboration meetings for all of our staff. And this is in addition to our regularly scheduled department meetings. He monitors and supports the implementation of our specialized curriculum, such as really great reading and unique curriculum. And then there's been a great support for the onboarding and new staff. So our new special education teachers, our related service providers, any TA or BA that might start working with a student. And what that support typically looks like is, reviewing IEPs, helping get schedules put in place, check-ins, even training or modeling lessons. I have a whole other list that I'm happy to share with you if you want more information, but I want to try to keep it brief. So those are only a few of the ways that I feel like this position has been impactful so far this year. Our plan for year 2 is to continue the support that I just spoke about, but also start coaching cycles. And our instructional coach will also be going to a training through BOCES for coaching cycles over the summer or early fall, so we're ready to go next school year. So with the success of the secondary position, we are proposing the same position at the elementary level. Again, it's not only to support teachers and students, but also families at Peter B. and A.W. Becker. So you can see that our focus areas are outlined on the slide. But our overall goal is really to provide consistent daily support, feedback, problem solving to enhance the instruction and also to continue to develop and maximize our current programming that we currently have right now.
Supplement what we already have with another person? Or is there just going to be one?
Add, not supplement. So we would be, so right now, the instructional coach primarily works at the secondary level. So he's responsible for supporting middle school and high school. So we're asking for the same support, but for the elementary level. And that position would be split between both buildings. So it would be one full-time position going back and forth and providing support to both buildings.
To what extent has the coach this year provided support to the elementary buildings?
Very little.
Is there a way to increase that without adding another coach position?
I mean, you know, given the contact time and our need to try to better support and improve the outcomes for our students with disabilities, it's really, I think, supporting teachers, the quality of our current instruction. I think the coaching cycles are going to be a great opportunity for everybody to grow and learn and build upon that. I would be nervous to stretch that, Mike, across the entire district. It's a lot of work. And I think that's where our priority needs to be, is supporting teachers, giving that ongoing daily support moving forward.
What do you mean by coaching cycles?
So coaching cycles for instructional coaches, I can review it. It's typically an improvement process. So you identify an area of need or something that you want to work on with a staff member. It's mutually agreed upon. So if I were to go into your room and we work on, I don't know, main idea or some aspect of my teaching or incorporating a new instructional strategy. So that instructional coach would go in, help identify that goal, provide support, feedback, lesson planning, ideas to support that. He already goes in and does not observations, but does walkthroughs and debriefs with teachers. So there would be an observation process. We collect data. We see, whatever we decided to target, did that change our outcomes for our students in the classroom? Did it work? And it's just a continuous cycle of improvement.
With all of the teachers identified within the special education realm? So would this instructional coach be helping self-contained, co-taught, and consultant
Across
teams?
the entire continuum,
Okay.
correct. And that's what he's doing right now at the secondary level, but not at the elementary.
Okay. So essentially, okay.
Yes, just to, I'm sorry, so the position it would be a TOSA. It is not a administrative position. It is a colleague of our teachers. They're not evaluating our teachers' progress. It's a support position. Yeah.
Because it's a very different thing when your supervisor's coming in and doing this, because there's that air of evaluation. So it's important that your peers be the ones that are helping.
Does the teacher reach out for this support?
Yeah, some of our teachers do. We have cycles right now where the teachers know that I think Tuesdays is middle school, Thursdays is high school. He goes in, he asks for, we're not intruding, but if teachers ask for feedback, he's happy to provide it.
Do they provide it whether the teacher wants it or not?
No.
Okay, so
But that's helpful for me as we debrief, and if there's anything that they would like to point out, I'm also there to support as well.
So just to clarify, does that mean that there are some of these classrooms that may not be utilizing that?
So the role of the instructional coach is pushing in to support every classroom. Year one is really their priority this year, was getting to know our programs, our teachers, getting to know our students, and supporting teachers in that relationship piece. We're trying to cultivate a relationship where there's trust. So we don't want to force this on anybody, but we want to try to build that relationship. So teachers are willing to let their guard down and share. Coaching cycles aren't necessarily easy. You have to identify an area that you want to improve upon. So we're trying to create that relationship this year and support. So in the future, we can have coaching cycles and try to see some of that improvement. Okay, thank you.
I was just thinking about something that supports this as well. Laura's here, and we've been talking about our mentoring program. And when I think about our new staff or newer staff, We have a mentoring program that supports them in year 1. But many of those new staff are in years 2, 3, and 4, and many of them are in special education in some very high needs classroom. And I think about this being a level of support to really help our new teachers who are entering the profession have the support that they need to build instructional practices in an environment where it's different than when I started teaching, and the level of support that we have. So I think that's an important piece to consider as well. It's not as formal as, we have to do this, but those are teachers who are also very often more open to it because they know they have some things to learn, and this would give us a more formalized approach to doing that through coaching cycles.
For professional development as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't,
Is there a way to utilize the coach for professional development as well?
absolutely.
One of my examples I did not add in because I had a whole list, but yes, with that addition, we've provided district-wide PD and training, school-wide PD and training, and department-wide with that support.
Thank you.
So our proposed, did I skip a slide? Thank you. Just slip a slide. Our proposed staffing recommendations that do carry a fiscal impact are adding 2 positions at the secondary level, one being a social worker that would be in place to support the social emotional needs of students. Social emotional needs of students and maintain the mental health support classrooms that we have at the middle school and high school currently. And the second position is a middle school ELA teacher to maintain the class sizes that we've had in place and to reinforce the need that we've prioritized as far as literacy across the content areas. So in the past, and the next couple of slides will highlight this in a little more detail, but we utilized federal COVID relief funds to fund additional mental health providers in the aftermath of COVID. So we know that that was essential at the time, and what we recognize is that the ongoing impact, and as our students continue to experience the trauma from COVID and what had happened in schools, that we propose adding this position to the operating budget because it's a high priority. It's still a need that exists that we want to make sure that we're supporting. And then we also used some of the additional the COVID relief funds to fund an additional teaching position at the middle school, and this position would be taking it from the COVID funds and rolling it into the operating budget as well. We know that literacy is a focus, and developing that particularly, well, at all levels, but we want to make sure that we're maintaining that class size at the middle school level in order to help approach meeting some of the targets that we have around that.
Would be taken over by our budget.
Yes, because the money that funded them currently is going away. We are not adding staff, but it has a fiscal impact because the money that we were using to pay for them, and I again use rough numbers of $100,000 per staff member, is that it has a financial impact because it hasn't been in the operating budget. It's been a separate pot of money. Yeah.
Right, because I'm trying to justify the 2 presentations here. If we're saying in the middle school that in order to maintain class size, it makes sense to convert a COVID-funded position into a general budget position, why at the same time are we saying at the elementary school we're going to eliminate a COVID funding position and cause an increase to class size?
So I'm going to switch back because there's 2 ways I think that we've been looking at the class sizes. So let me start with middle school. So rightfully so, folks at the table and the folks who are watching at home are thinking about my child, the cohort. When we look at class sizes from a district level, we think about, I'm a 6th grade teacher. I had classes of average size of 14 this year. Next year, I'm going to be at 17. That's it's 3 more students over 4 classes, so we're talking 12 more students over the course of a day. That impact on relationships and feedback and assessment is not significant. Now I say that because not knowing who the mix of kids are in any of those classes, but generally speaking. And when we look the same thing at the average class sizes for a teacher from year to year. So at Peter B, we're talking about in third grade, those third grade teachers have class sizes of 16 right now. Next year, they'd be looking at class sizes of 18. So we built that and we made those recommendations based on class sizes for the teachers and that group of students moving forward. Rightfully so, as parents and community members, you're looking at it like my kid's in that class and they're going from a class of 16 to a class of 21. But I would argue that some of the supports that we want to put in place around using some of the coaching models, thinking about coaching, because that's going to impact not only the students who are in special education programs, but the general education students who are in consultant teacher models and integrated co-teach models. And we're also looking at students who, and how the principals decide to allocate those class sizes, as Brian had mentioned, and I don't have it in front of me. We also have opportunities to do some multi-age teams or multi-age classrooms that can help alleviate and mix those students in different ways, so that it isn't necessarily the same group of students who are going to be in classes together. So when we looked at those numbers, if I'm a third grade teacher at Peter B and I had 16 and I'm going up to 18, that doesn't seem like a big jump. If I'm a fourth grade teacher, I had 18 students this year, next year I'm going to have 21. It's more students, but still within a reasonable realm, and trying to keep that balanced and have some parity across the two buildings. When you look at the average class sizes in the intermediate grades at Becker, they're a little bit bigger than they are at Peter B. So it's also looking at class sizes, teachers, but also across the district. What is your experience as a student if you're going to one school or the other? I don't know if that helps.
Well, it doesn't help me because I've got a real issue with the whole, just to be clear, this doesn't affect my kids. This is not anything to do with my kids. They're not affected by any of these changes. As a matter of principle, one of the benefits of this district that was made clear through the community survey is small class sizes. And I sit here looking at the class sizes creep. And I say creep, I mean, in some cases they jump. Kindergarten from 15 to 19, that's a pretty big jump if there's one adult in the classroom for 19 kindergartners. That's a big jump.
And that's an incredibly crucial year for learning to read.
And
that is an estimate because we don't have kindergarten registration right now.
What's spinning through my head, I guess, is that we're being asked to give up 2 gen ed positions for what seems like a variety of special education resources, including a coach, which is not an instructional position. It's a position to help teachers teach, but it's not teachers. Mm-hmm. And I just question whether that's really what makes the biggest impact for the biggest number of students. This whole presentation seems, at least at the elementary level, the improvements that are being proposed seem to be almost exclusively within the special education arena at the cost of larger class sizes for the general population. So for me, I just question whether that should be the priority that we're focusing on.
Can I just speak to that for a second? Just having been in the buildings earlier in my career, the jump from third to fourth typically is a little bit bigger, and average class size historically has been 21 to 23 kids in fourth and fifth grade. Now, to your point, COVID makes a big difference, but also if we're looking at 19 in kindergarten, 21 in fourth, in order to keep it even, we basically would have to have another teacher for all the grades, because at kindergarten, do you see what I'm saying? If you want to bring the same equity down to kindergarten, it's much more important, in my opinion, to have a 15, 16 size class in kindergarten than in, fourth or fifth grade. So this is not abnormal for what we've seen historically in our classes, and there have been cases in the past where my oldest 2 are a perfect example. The oldest one had a really big class, the next one, had a small class, the next one had a really big class. They had to add a teacher or take away a teacher based on the class size. that's pretty average. It's not like we're looking at really abnormal numbers for fourth and fifth grade. But I also think that something like an instructional coach, if you are better able to manage these special needs children that you already have in your room, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding, is that you want those coaches to be able to help the general ed teachers deal better with the kids who have special needs within the room? Is that part of what they would be doing?
That is, and when you think about high-quality instructional practices that have a high impact, they're going to be impactful for students with disabilities, they're going to be impactful for students who are in intervention support, they're going to be impactful for students who need enrichment. High leverage instructional practices that teachers become using in their classrooms for everyone has an impact over time.
And so personally, I would rather see that our teachers be more effective within the populations that we might have to have anyway based on our budget. We can't add a teacher to every grade at both schools to make the class sizes where we really would love them. But if we have extra support to each of those teachers via a coach, and that's truly how it's working, and I think that's what we have to maybe survey, and since we have that secondary coach already.
I just wonder, thinking about community survey that we got, and I understand your point exactly, but looking at what we learned from that survey in the public, the class sizes are extremely what's important to them. And I see your point. I'm just trying to weigh, like Mike said, eliminating, I don't want to say eliminating, but going down 2 teaching position spots to hire a non-instructional teacher. So I guess my question is that really the best way to do things? I see both points, but I'm not sure.
So can I just ask one? I'm sorry. For the elementary speech therapist, you do propose this individual be in the classrooms on a consistent daily basis within the pre-K to 2 realm.
Pre-K, we want to focus on pre-K and K initially, and again, depending on.
So my next question is, we already, as a part of our approval of the full-day UPK, included a speech therapist and a school psychologist. So are we proposing that we need 2 speech therapists to help at the pre-K and the K level?
Let me go back to the slide so I can.
I just want to know what we're proposing and ensure that it has the integrity and the most impact. Because do we not have a speech therapist that's assigned to the pre-K classrooms?
We do, but they
Okay.
have other responsibilities that are, so that, as we've discussed before, they're not in the classroom for a full part of their position.
Okay, and will this person be in the classroom full-time as well, or not in the classroom? I see what you have proposed there, and I know that it's mandated services, and I'm not exactly sure how RTI works in the speech realm. And then under Peter B, but not under A.W. Becker, you have preschool evaluations, and we're in 100% compliance. So now we need 2 additional an additional speech therapist to provide those preschool evaluations?
This would allow us to provide more. So when you say the preschool, the speech teacher going into the preschool classrooms.
Pre-K, sorry.
Pre-K, well, that's fine, pre-K.
Sorry.
But the way I'm just trying to make sure that we're kind of talking about the same thing. That is RTI. When the speech therapist goes in and is working with a small group, it's not mandated services. It's an opportunity for tier 1 core instruction to have additional, they might be sitting at a center with students and doing letters and sounds. They might be doing some rhyming. So, and that kind of work is something a classroom teacher or TA can do as well, but having that specialist in the room. And what we're proposing is that we'd like to make sure that that happens on a more and we did know that it has been scaled back due to the increase in evaluations at this time of year. And what's good about that is that they've spent this time in the classroom up until this point to be able to kind of model that, and some of the things that they've been doing can be recreated by the classroom teacher or by the TA that's in the preschool classrooms. So what we're proposing is that we want to continue to support students in that way and use that model in kindergarten as well. And when Colleen was talking about really the additional need for the speech therapist is to make sure that additional speech therapist is the increase in students who are using augmentative communication devices that require a heavy lift as far as implementation and support, and those students also have additional language-related skill time. So I don't know if that's
So
helping or
basically,
not.
2 of the existing student speech services, they take care of the mandated IEP and 504, and they do RTI, say 1 K2, 1 3 5. Just,
There isn't.
they split it up depending on what's mandated on IEPs.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of intervention support, tier 1 intervention support for grades 3 through 5 for speech. It's
No,
more.
but there's
yeah.
some mandated IEP.
Oh,
and
mandated, for
504,
yes, absolutely,
right?
mandated
So
services.
say that those 2 people are already existing and they take care of those. The mandated service intensive skills would be the one that you're adding, and that would be for the 812 and the 1211.
Yes.
And then the UPK kindergarten would stay as is. So really, you're just adding the intensive skills speech therapist.
So
Does that help?
And
when is the transition technically, well, learning, we switch over from learning to read and reading to learn? It's around 3rd or 4th grade, right? Typically?
well, actually, some of the work that we'll be doing next year with Science of Reading is asking us to revisit that because you are always reading to learn.
Well, I guess what I mean by that, yeah, you're always reading to learn, but just the traditional terminology. So, but my concern is for ELA, and we know that's going to be an extreme focus. You're cutting down in 4th grade, we're going down a section, increasing class sizes. What happens if those students there are not ready, are not where they're supposed to be? Wouldn't an extra teacher, an extra session where the classes are smaller be better to bridge that gap? Because you may wind up in a situation where, what do we do at that point? They're not ready for the next jump, and then what resources do we throw at them?
So one of the things that has been a challenge for us, and Jenny and Jackie have been at the Board of Ed CNI meetings, when we look at the data, and we have had small class sizes, we've had those numbers, our student performance across the board, gen ed, special ed, other breakout groups, are not performing compared, and with students who are like us, in districts that are like us, we're underperforming. And so for me, in making these recommendations, if we continue to do the same, and we're saying we need small class sizes because it's going to help with performance, we have evidence and data that suggests that it maybe doesn't. So a shift in our resources and thinking about how we approach these, I hate to call them problems, these challenges in a different way is what we're proposing in this budget. And I will say, like, when you talk about a person, that's an immediate feel. You see the numbers are lower, and you feel like, okay, we've done something. When we're talking about bringing in a coach and professional development that unfolds over multiple years, that is slower growth. But I would argue that that's the growth that is sustainable. When we think about what we want to do and leave a lasting legacy, we want to build systems that work, that feel supported, and are well-researched and practiced. And those are the things that we want to be able to do with these positions that we're proposing to include in the budget.
The spot where I'm stuck is the preschool evaluations. We hired an additional speech therapist. Yes, there was advertised that they would also be part of the preschool evaluations, but I feel as though at least my approval and my desire for that position was for them to be in the classroom on a regular basis. There are outside agencies that provide the evaluation option, and yes, they may not be as compliant, and I understand that that's a significant impact to the special education department, and I don't want children to not be evaluated, but we already have an additional speech therapist that is supposed to be completing preschool evaluations, and now we're adding an additional staff member to also still help with preschool evaluations. How many preschool evaluations do we do?
Yeah, I can jump in there to clarify that. I think Mel hit it on the head. It's more, we do have, sometimes we have providers that travel back and forth, so looking at the all the needs across both buildings. The need is at A.W. Becker right now it's going to be next year too, with the students that have more intensive language needs that require really a full-time speech teacher just for those 2 classrooms alone. And as far as the preschool evaluations go, only one provider at Peter B., which is what we have right now, would be still doing. So we're not doing anything different with the preschool evaluations. You know, as far as the push-in time and the other service supports that they provide for preschool, it's my understanding that they're pushing in. I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 days. I don't want to misspeak because I'm not, I think it depends on the building. But so the additional position that we're really asking for is to support the needs of mandated positions, but we're just looking at how we can be more efficient with some of the other existing positions that we have and what their duties will be. It is really complex to create schedules for speech therapists around needs and grade levels and other services, so it just, you know, it might shift a little bit, but the need is really because of the intensive language needs. We've had a few students transfer into district, and we have to reduce the number of RTI services that we provide because they're not mandated. We feel strongly about providing a robust RTI system, especially for our younger kiddos. So, and again, it would give us more flexibility to maintain those response to intervention services in the area of speech. Okay.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'll ask. Has there been feedback from the Teachers Association in regards to these proposed staffing changes and the direction that you're looking to go? Is there any input from the teachers? This is a change in direction, right? You're looking at, we're doing the same old thing, like you said, you keep doing the same old thing, get the same results. So you're shifting, you know, hiring coaches, shifting more at the special education at the beginning levels. What is the input? Has there been any conversation with the teachers? Has there been any suggestions, anything coming from them?
Well, as far as this presentation, this has been shared with the board first. I just want to, but what fed into our rationale and our decision-making process have been conversations going throughout the year, department meetings, content specialist meetings, Board of Ed curriculum instruction meetings. I mean, you know, so, and working with the elementary CCSs and where we're seeing the needs, where we're seeing some of the payoff from adopting really great reading, knowing that that instruction is going to pay dividends in a few years when we see older students coming up who have had that systematic instruction. So did we ask them, do you think we need these?
No, I think you answered my question.
Okay.
It came from direct input.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I should be out in the classrooms more, but as much as we can.
Thank you.
So I know that we've talked a lot about the elementary level. It's also notable the chemistry class is substantially higher than others. And I mean, I know that that's a significantly hands-on kind of class. And I don't have a ton of experience with the high school, but with that class size being, you know, a bit bigger than some of those other ones, and a class requiring, you know, more hands-on activity than a lot of other classes, are we able to really meet the needs of kids in that class to make sure that they're getting an appropriate experience, that they're really getting all of that information? Because, you know, I mean, you look at, and obviously I understand physics is a higher level one and you have a lot of people drop out of sciences before then, but to see the difference between chemistry and physics is very substantial.
Well, two things. One, this is old data. It's harder for us to pull class sizes at the high school level, particularly as I'm getting to know our new system. I can get our average class sizes for chemistry currently, if you want to just look at that. I can bring that back to you. And the other thing is, what else did I want to say about that? Oh, our performance. One of the reasons why we didn't emphasize a lot of the work that we had in making these priorities for the board to consider is our performance at the high school is where we are actually doing, where we are outperforming the state on many of the regions. And that is something that we want to celebrate. And we were able to do that in 2021, 22 with class sizes of 23. So we didn't look to make any changes there, but we do have, for some of those courses, it's a matter of student interest and we're balancing out numbers. So I don't have updated numbers for chemistry. It's 18? Oh, wow. 18.
Okay, that's a substantial difference. I'm sorry, I
That
didn't,
is. I know,
I
and
didn't catch on where this
Yeah.
is from 2 to 3 years ago. So this is probably not really at all the numbers that they are currently. Understood. Thank you.
Sure.
And thank you for the quick pulling up of that
Are
information.
you on your app?
It's very speedy.
Okay.
Good work, thank you.
So one of the things that we talked about in a previous presentation is that we really wanted to look at pre-pandemic. We had a lot of money that we were able to use during the pandemic, and this is coming out of it. So this slide really is intended just to demonstrate where we were the year the pandemic hit us and where we are proposing for that social worker position. So it would allow us, so when we met with the principals over time and thinking through what are priorities and what do we need, that social emotional needs at the high school and middle school continue to be a great need, so being able to maintain that is important. So looking at a difference of 2 social workers, but only asking for an increase of 1 position. With attrition, that's how we've been able to address that. I did it again. So with regard to health and safety, there were really 2 things that we wanted to think through with regard to student emotional health and safety and also physical health and safety. So in looking at and what the elementary schools have been able to accomplish using Close Gap. Right now, we're using the free version. It's not a big ask, but I wanted to include it because I think it's important to highlight how we are being thoughtful about some of the resources that we're using. And one of the things, 2 of the things about including Close Gap and the paid version is being able to improved reporting. Some of the data that Deb showed that they included in their presentation was actually data that was pulled from that system that the school counselors are managing and manipulating. This would allow better reporting capabilities, more efficient use of their time. It also would allow for student rostering, which again, right now they're taking class lists and manually putting them in every year. So it's a matter of making a system that is already working more efficient. And then secondly, the cameras at the middle school, we've been talking a lot about school safety, and it's a bigger chunk of money, but really looking at improving the monitoring and security of day-to-day operations in the middle school. So I want to just switch things over to Colleen again for a moment, if I stop clicking the wrong button. Did you want to say anything about the social work? Okay.
Anybody has any questions?
I feel like I jumped over it too quickly.
It's okay. I was just going to give a little more detail to what we're asking for with the additional social work position at the high school and middle school next year. Pre-COVID, as you can see on the slide, we had a total of 3 full-time secondary social work positions. And for the 24-25 school year, we're asking for 1 additional position. In 2021, we did reallocate one of our special education position to the PPS department, which allowed us to support the creation of our mental health support classrooms. And then through the COVID funding, we were also able to support 2 grant-funded positions, which Jean mentioned will end at the end of this school year. So what we did is we really took a look at mandated services and the data, the number of students that are accessing even school building support, so not through a mandated system, but through a building level support system, the number of acute crises that we are dealing with on a daily, weekly basis at both the middle school and high school. And in doing that, we do feel as though we do, to go back to only one support person at the middle school and 2 at the high school. We want to maintain our mental health classrooms, and in asking for 1 additional social worker, we'll be able to maintain those 2 mental health support classrooms at each level. In addition to that, we will also have 1.4 social workers to support IEP services, 504 services, and building level services. And then at the high school, we'll have 1.6. So the thought is each building will have a full-time social worker, in addition to the social worker that's already associated with the mental health support classroom. And then we will have another individual who, based on need, and this is my estimate right now, that it would be potentially 0.4 at the middle school and 0.6 at the high school. But again, that could vary based on needs. So just to give you an overview of kind of some of the building level services that occur on a daily basis. So our providers provide direct and indirect school-based counseling services. They provide check-ins and consultations with students. They manage safety plans. So when students have hospitalizations and they come out, we are required to have safety plans in place. They respond to acute crisis situations and then conduct risk assessments associated with that. And then we also provide consultation to teachers, to parents, and then we coordinate with outside agencies. To give you an overview of kind of what we're looking at from a mandated standpoint as far as number of minutes and how many minutes a related service provider can provide monthly. So 1 full-time social worker, we estimate, provides about 4,000 minutes of service per month. So the number of need that we have based on our numbers this year between mandated services, which is IEP and 504 at the middle school, is about 3,100. And then at the high school, we have a total of, again, 3,100, just about. So what it would technically break down to is we'd have just over, probably 1 FTE associated with, and I think that we would break it up a little bit for scheduling purposes, but 1 full-time social worker would allocate to those mandated services, and then we would have, the 0.4, 0.6 for any building level services and supports. So it gives us some flexibility. Okay. Any questions? Sure, the mental health support classroom, yeah. So we were seeing an increased need, it was right around COVID, and we opened up 2 mental health classrooms. So this is a tier 3 intervention that is accessible to all students, so you don't need an IEP to access it or a 504. There is a set criteria. We typically ensure that we've used less restrictive interventions prior, so check and connects and other types of behavioral support interventions. But we were seeing such an increased need with mental health and management of those types of symptoms within school. We were seeing an increase of hospitalizations. So we have a mental health classroom which has a social worker and a teaching assistant attached to it, and there is a lot of case management. So that individual is working with the teachers of those students when they're unwell and cannot be within the classroom setting. There's a safe spot for them to come, whether they need de-escalation, to be reset, whether it's just too overstimulating for whatever reason. There's a teaching assistant that's able to provide some work. They can do work together, and then they're wonderful with the goal is always to get the student back into the classroom. But with a lot of our students, they have multiple providers, so they're working with Northern Rivers or some outside consultant. They're working with families, so a lot of communication back and forth with families just because of the nature of the type of needs that some of these students are presenting with. So we have that as a support at both buildings. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so 1 of those classrooms in each building?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So looking ahead, and I can take some additional questions if you have them. At our meeting next week, Jesse's going to present a 3-part budget proposal, and that's going to lay out all the numbers for what we are proposing. And then hopefully we'll have a budget adoption on April 10th when we come back from break. So any additional questions?
Yes.
It'd be interesting to see what the budget looks like without any reductions in elementary school teachers. Just so we have proper context when we're making this decision. I think there's been a lot of discussion about what direction we think we should go in, and it seems like a pretty impactful decision. So if we could see what that financial analysis looks like, it might be helpful.
Okay.
I mean, including how they want to do it and adding the teachers back in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So elementary principals and we, the district office, look at these numbers every year. And, occasionally we have bubbles of students. We have the 160 class, 160 in a grade level. We've had a few go by, and then the next one's 122, and you're trying to strategically plan for that. One thing I want to point out in this, and not to undo that, if we add a staff member, it'll unquestionably reduce the class sizes. It will only do so in one grade. So if we said K, and I was just saying to Colleen, I don't know where we got 19 from. 19 would presume that we'd have almost 150 students in a cohort, which we don't frequently have right now. But, we could choose to do it at third grade, but fourth and fifth would still be 21 and 23. We could choose to do it at fourth grade, but third grade would still be 21. It's unfortunate that you can't hire one staff member and take two off of all of the grade levels. So there's always that difficult challenge, as well as figuring out strategically where that one additional FTE would land.
So my question is in slide 3 with the district priorities, the prioritizing early literacy development, connecting literacy, and then to go along with slide 8 with like the priorities. Are these things that are going to be a part of including our goals, what the buildings will be targeting for their school action plans, for their goals? Like the improving reading by whatever percent, improving math. So are they going to be looking at the priorities that the district has come up with to incorporate into their goal?
Yeah, the idea is the board is at 30,000 feet, and then as I develop my own goals, they're at 10,000, and the building is at ground level. They need to work with their building leadership teams, as they always have, to look at these priority areas and figure out what the actions are, the greatest gain, potentially greatest gain actions that they can take in order to get there. That's why I say that the board establishing these goals is very helpful. It helps to shepherd us in a unified direction. Not that we haven't been, every building's addressing attendance, every building's addressing discipline, and they are addressing academics usually through reduction of students who are not reading at grade level or doing math at grade level. But as I said 3 weeks ago, we need to change our ideology about that. And we need to say 100% of kids. And what is the thing that we're going to do? What is the systematic thing, like Jean was saying, that we're going to do that's going to finally rotate us? Small class sizes alone has not been the thing that's done it. That's why we want to invest in a little bit different way.
On your proposed health and safety, you have two things, close gap and obviously middle school cameras. They need that system. Is that all you're proposing in regards to health and safety? It seems like...
Monetary, and that's why they're on there.
Okay.
Yeah, monetary impact.
Okay.
And actually, from, as an example, and I'll talk about it in my portion, when we meet with health and safety next, we'll be reviewing the safety audit. And from that, making decisions about our infrastructure safety. But the other piece that we know is the constant mystery, all the way back to the beginning, which is what do we do to help teach resiliency to the students? If I were to identify one thing that has probably been crushed by the pandemic is resiliency. They're not starting from 100. They're all starting from 50 and 40 and 30. And the smallest things, make them give up. And that's something that institutionally, I'm talking about health and safety and mental health, that's something institutionally that we know that we have to address.
I guess I'm still kind of stuck on this, providing the evaluations. How many evaluations is the district completing for preschool? Do we have any information on that?
I'm sure that we do.
Okay.
And we never, I only know it because I know the plight of all the other superintendents and school districts in the area. We didn't do an excellent job of describing this. We are mandated to have our students evaluated at that level. The county pays for it. The county is supposed to provide the service providers or reimburse us for those evaluations. But the problem is the same with the county as everywhere. They don't have the providers. That's why we're out of compliance. So we did something that was good for our own kids. We hired a staff member to help with them. We didn't make that clear before. When we say we're out of compliance, the county was supposed to be providing those evaluation services, but they just could not. And every school district is in the same boat unless, and for each evaluation we do, and I'll get the numbers for you, Jenny, we get a reimbursement from the county. It is not anywhere near what it costs us to employ that person, but we recognize that we also get other added benefit about having these providers in the district. It isn't just evaluation.
I'm not opposed to us, I want us to be in compliance. I want us to be able to evaluate and determine if students are eligible and need them benefit from the services and then receive the services. I'm just struggling a little bit with, I feel like we've already added a position to accommodate that. And I just want to make sure that the need for that is as significant as adding yet more staff to do that, when there are outside agencies that can. And I understand there are compliance issues, but there are a lot of agencies that provide it.
Not enough, but we'll find out.
Correct.
Actually, it'd be good to see data between like 2 years ago and this year or something to be able to demonstrate that. But
I just want to see this position utilized to benefit the promotion of literacy development and not to accommodate more evaluation needs for compliance purposes.
understood, right.
I want to
and-
ensure that if our goal is to increase early literacy, that we're doing that. And I understand identifying students who need the help is part of that, but I don't know.
Yeah, the other piece of it, it isn't just a number, it's also, what does it mean when we say that? Is it a 1 hour, is it 6 hours, is it 5 days, an hour a day? And I don't know that intimately, but that would be good to know. As we're talking about, is 90% of their time dedicated to it? Then absolutely, it's reasonable to question if it's the right investment for us. Any other difficult questions for Jean?
And on that, it says UPK SEL specials. Are the speech therapists running social emotional learning groups?
So in order to be in alignment with the teacher's contract, they have to have a special every day.
Okay.
So that, the SEL is a special, so
Okay.
it's okay.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Anything else? Well, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right, moving into business considerations, we will take up 6.1 through 6.11 first, and 6.12 will be roll called individually. So is there a motion for one or more of 6.1 through 6.11? Jackie, motion for 6.1 through 6.11, second by Ed. Any discussion?
Which one are we separating on? I'm sorry.
6.12.
Okay, okay.
Any questions on 6.1 through 6.11? All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion for approval of 6.12. Ed, motion, second, Kristen. Sue, could you, any discussion on that? Sue, could we roll call?
Mr. Beninati?
Aye.
Mr. Deo?
Aye.
No Bray. Mrs. Hill Burns? Mrs. Calney?
Aye.
Mrs. Molino?
Aye.
Mrs. Potter?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, personnel considerations, 7.1 through 7.16. Motion for one or more.
Motion all.
Ed, motion for all. Second, Jenny. Any discussion?
Yeah, I actually just had a question. I noticed a couple of the resignations were from the Best Buddies program. do we have, I don't know how many people normally staff that. I'm not really familiar with the program since it's in the high school. Do we have a plan as to how that will be staffed if we're losing 2 people to this? And sort of how we plan on moving forward with that program?
So I do know that the principal is going to post for those positions to see if there's folks who are interested in taking it up for the rest of the year. But the clubs they do run, it's a loss.
Are those the only 2 people that run that program? Is that losing
At the high school.
everyone?
And then there's a Best Buddies at the middle school.
Okay, but so this is basically the whole program. We're losing
It's an after-school club.
anyone who's doing, okay. Okay.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Following that same kind of thing for the class advisor, how does that work now that we're losing a class advisor and that class needs an advisor? They need help.
Was she the sole
Yeah, and
advisor
she
for the
just
class?
volunteered last year, I believe. Like, we haven't had anybody for our crew.
So there's no advisor at all then? Okay.
Same thing. They would
So
post-
how does that
post a
work? Does it post to teachers and then okay.
And Vanessa is a support staff person.
Yes.
So anyone, if none of the teaching staff are interested in doing it, then other staff can.
Other staff can, is that what you're saying? Okay.
And then if no staff
Staff
are
can
interested, then
parent-
what's the
yeah,
next
because I've had
step?
a few parents inquire about it. So how does that work? If nobody steps up, can a parent step in?
I'm trying to think of an instance where we've had it. We certainly had it with coaching. I'm not sure.
Ryan, did you want to say something?
As of this morning, Ryan was going to do it himself. Yes, that's.
Take it on. No, I'm just kidding.
No. So I put an email to for Best Buddies and haven't had anybody respond to that yet, but I put an email, anticipated opening for the class advisors, and we had 2 teachers already express interest.
So good.
Okay.
So I'm
Right.
sorry, I'm just going to go back to the other one then. So the Best Buddies program, if you don't have anyone who reaches out with interest, will that program just be ended sort of in the middle of the year? What's the intention?
I'm not positive, but the middle school and high school frequently collaborate on some of these things. I don't know if that's their intention to collaborate right now. I don't know if we could do something unusual and have the advisors at the middle school adopt the kids and, we change the rating or pace or something. But it's not an impossibility that someone would step up and help with that.
Anything further? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right. Dr. Bailey, what do you have for us?
I took pictures on Friday and didn't think to send them until yesterday. The dugouts being placed on Friday while it was a recess day with the enormous crane was an impressive sight. But as Kristen mentioned, when you're driving off a 9W and you see the dugouts on the baseball field over here, it looks really awesome. Peterbee's the same way. So dugouts are in place, which will allow them to finish up the fencing. Fencing at Peterbee looks amazing too, and I know there's a few. They had to wait for that to be placed before they could finish up their work there. What were you going to say?
I couldn't remember from the construction part of it. Did you see, I don't know if the benches. There's questions like, I thought they were going to be already kind of fabbed in there and cemented in so nobody could.
I did run that by Jesse before the meeting. Yeah, there are supposed to be benches at some point.
Well, you're going to review the article for sure. That was it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in there.
Yeah,
We're going to review it and we'll report it back out to you guys.
Okay. Thanks.
Having sat on a concrete bench, sometimes it's better not to have one. But they'll have some option in there. I had the opportunity to participate in the Wholesome Community Action Committee, Wholesome, Holcim, yesterday morning, and there was quite a diverse group of people there, members of the community, the town supervisor, some community action people from Albany County. And it is always fascinating to see presentations by them. They talk about, obviously, the environmental impact of the plant across the street from us and some of the historical things that they've tried to correct. And some of the technical advancements, like when you look across the street, you can see that they've removed almost all of their old kiln, which was that square building that was on the left that always looked like it had holes in it with the two tubes. That's mostly gone now as part of their beautification and remediation plan. But they're very eager to have a productive partnership with the school district. So it actually worked out that I'm going to take my superintendent student council students over there for a field trip on Tuesday. We meet once a month at high school, but we're going to meet at Folsom on Tuesday. And I can remember being on that plant site before the pandemic and 4 or 5 years ago in the office building there and being there with people whose names you would know from our community that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who've lived here all that time, and they've never, ever seen what was behind the berm. And we drive by all the time, and you don't know what's going on back there, and it's fascinating. So I'm excited for the kids to see that. The plant manager and some of the engineers are going to talk to the kids while we're over there. And they in turn want to send their staff over here to assist us, talk about science and engineering and do some things like that. The governor's budget was harmful to a lot of school districts in New York State, including us. And both sides of the aisle have now submitted their budgets, and they are unquestionably in support of school districts in New York State. So we are very hopeful that the governor changes some of the things in our initial proposal and makes some of our neighboring districts whole. Schools like Knox, they lost $1.2, $1.6 million in this budget. And we got no inflation percentage increase in our foundation aid, which is impactful to us. So ideally, that will correct itself. We had our Communications Advisory Committee this past Monday. A couple board members were able to join us for that. And what we actually did is we looked at the data from the Board of Education survey from the fall. And we focused on those areas that were specifically around communication and comments around communication. Michelle was in the meeting with us, and we're developing some plans around how to, first to get the low-hanging fruit, but also some high-action items that we think the community will appreciate. One thing we heard loud and clear, common platform of communication from all buildings. That, you can only get messages so many different ways. If you have more than one child, you're getting messages in different ways. So trying to unify that under one umbrella will be very helpful, and that's going to be a target for us for September, something that is convenient for our staff and effective for our families. We also looked at the new mascot logo stuff, which is really getting close now. And as I mentioned, we hope to have the branding guide out this week. Jean scheduled a number of Code of Conduct subcommittee meetings based on the meetings we had for the Code of Conduct Committee, bless you. And they're at building level so that they can work on specific language and action plans around that, and they're happening over the next 2 months. And we have our health and safety meeting coming up the 3rd or 4th week in April. And our intention is to look at a summary of the safety report that Needham offered us. In other words, here are the things that we suggest that you do short and long term in order to improve the physical safety of the district. I was going to invite board members to attend that meeting if they're available to do so. And if not, we'd be more than happy to share the summary with the board at a different time. It's interesting, there are limitations, legal limitations for us about what we're allowed to discuss in public. As for instance, members of any building in the district that work in a building have the right to access the emergency planning for that building. They're part of the planning and the execution of it. But someone who works in the middle school cannot know what happens at Peterby, and someone who works at Becker cannot know what happens at the high school. So likewise, we can't openly discuss with the public safety protocols and items like that. So we had a little discussion about that if in the event the board wanted to talk about the summary, that we'd be able to do so in executive session if it were confidential information. So We can start with Health and Safety Committee and see where we want to go from there. The other piece was, we had talked about having a third party from outside the district do another evaluation, which we do think is wise. Needham helped us to develop our safety plan, and through their evaluation, they shot holes all through it, which is great. But you want a third party to look at it from a different vantage point, not knowing what the baseline is. So we'll make our decision around that in a month when we meet the committee. I think that is it. Oh, and congratulations to the cast and crew of Mary Poppins. I was tired by the end, watching all the things they did over the span of the show. All of us had a chance to see it. And just to see our kids who, you know, walk looking down at the floor with their headphones in, with their hats on, and, you know, mumble, and then get up on stage and sing and tap dance, and wow. So what a blessing for all the hard work from the staff and for the students, both on stage and behind the scenes. It was really awesome.
The Wizard of Oz fifth grade production was fabulous as well.
And that, yeah, that sure went down.
It's a precursor to these kids being interested in the middle school and high school
That's
productions,
right.
and
It's foreshadowing.
it was very nicely done. Congratulations to all those involved with that.
Yeah.
Mary Poppins was also great. The costumes were insane, in a good way.
All right, thank you. Jean?
Well, I'm not going to talk about Mary Poppins, except I don't know how to turn the flash off of my phone, and you couldn't take flash, but those costumes and the set design and the set moving, and the choreography and the acting and the singing was absolutely incredible. I cannot imagine. We all saw how late they were here working on it. We also had an author visit at Peter B. Ben Barrowman is a local author, and he has a series of books self-published that all have, each book has a different social emotional theme. So he came and introduced it, and I got to see him working with the intermediate students. It was grade 4, but he met with every grade level and interacted with them in different ways. With the older kids, he talked about the publishing process and how he went through his writing process and creating characters. Really interactive with the kids. It was great. And that really was spearheaded by the CCS at Peter B. And then, of course, word got out, so he'll be going to A.W. Becker later this spring. I also wanted to congratulate Allison Kennedy, who's in grade 11, and Hane Colaquin. She's a 12th grader. They were both selected for a student juried art show. There were almost 600 submissions. They both were selected. Surprisingly, they were both photography submissions. And when I went to the space at Sage, it's a lovely gallery, but there was such a wide range of medium and what kids were creating. So I don't know how they picked, but it was pretty incredible. And it's still there if you happen to be in downtown Albany, you want to stop in. They have, I think the gallery's open through April break, the exhibit. And then Seth Stanton and I, the HR director, we went to a Capital Region Career Fair on Monday, which was a little slow at the beginning. We were there until almost 6, and after school got out, we got to meet a number of new folks who are looking for teaching positions, teaching assistant, getting into schools, and it was really, it was encouraging because some of these very young people, very professional, came up, shook our hands, introduced themselves, and are really excited about getting into teaching. And Seth let me know today that 3 of them have already reached back out to him. So, yeah, there's hope for the future. And then finally, I just wanted to update you, pre-K registration and K registration are open. And right now, because pre-K, if we have too many folks who want to join us, we'll have to have a lottery, but right now we're at 36. So we're in good shape, and I know Michelle sent out another push to encourage families to register. So I'll keep you updated on those numbers.
72.
72, 36 at each.
And we also have spaces at Circle of Friends.
We do,
Yeah.
Yep. And that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Jesse?
I don't have a lot tonight, but I do want to say that the Transportation Department has been working very digitally to get this new program out We're going to be starting training very soon and also starting a few, I think we're at 8 pilot kind of programs to kind of get the bugs out before we go next year with the new system for everybody. So we're starting training now with that, and we'll be having a communication out here pretty soon with the parents of those 8 runs that we're going to do. So that's all I got.
It?
Yep.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah.
All right.
Busy with that budget, you know?
Thank you. Are there any new business items that anybody would like to bring up?
One, Dr. Bailey, I know I had emailed you guys briefly on this, and you had mentioned, so I think a workforce climate survey can be really important. I understand you said, we've done one recently. Would you be able to share the results of that with the board? And forgive me if I've just overlooked it somewhere in my emails, but I would be, very interested to see, the staff's perspective on how things are going, and maybe where we can also make some improvements. I find those to be very beneficial, so I'm glad to hear that we have recently done one. I just want to make sure that we're getting that feedback to us as well.
So to fill in the
In
rest of the
February?
blanks.
You said it was done in February?
Fill in the rest of the blanks. We had all staff, all 430, invited all staff to participate in a survey in November of 2022, and we relaunched it at the beginning of February. And I think at the close of February, we only had 75, so I sent it out again this past Monday, and I think we're up to about 130 now. I think the first one had 210 or so, so our goal would be to get to the 210.
Yeah.
So
It's tough. It's tough to get people to fill out surveys. That's not a terrible response rate, honestly, but the more we can get, obviously, the better.
The first round, we carved out, or we put it on the agenda for one of our PD half-days, just that way it gets all staff. Carve out 10, 15 minutes, so we were hoping we'd have more after that. That's why Brian pushed it out again, so hopefully we'll get some.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.
I have just one question, sorry. Is the communication director's information available on the website?
Is the what?
The communication director's information. I tried to find her email for something, and I must not have been typing in the right thing, or I don't know how to achieve that result. Her name is Michelle, correct? Okay. And her title is communication director?
Yes, it'd be very clever of her to remain completely incognito.
Well, I tried using like the little magnifying glass.
I typed communications into the search bar, and she came right up. Into the search engine, I just typed in communications, and then there's a page dedicated to communications, news media requests, contact and phone, email and phone number, how to download the RCS app.
You go to just the menu, and you scroll just in our district, there's one that
I
says
almost
communications.
exclusively use the magnifying glass to find stuff, because I hate menus. I would rather someone, like Google, hey Google, oh, sorry.
Okay, great, perfect. I just couldn't.
I would
find her.
rather someone hand me the information, so I always use the magnifying glass to search for stuff.
All right, going through the old business items. Was there something else, Jenny?
No, thank you, that's great, thank you.
Can leave everything on here except review the language in the letter that goes out to parents regarding student absence. Has that been completed?
Yes.
Okay.
With some feedback from staff. And I think Christina.
It is uploaded in Synergy. It is uploaded in Synergy. We focused on the elementary language. There wasn't the middle school and high school letters look a little different. I am wondering if there was an issue with retrieving it, because Tom Trainer, the counselor at Becker, reached out to me and said, I'm just going to make a print copy of this because I couldn't get it to download. So we're still working it out, but it's been revised.
All unveiled threats have been removed.
Yes.
Which was really the priority, yes, yeah.
For the old business, can we add the TCI training?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got to mention that. I should have last meeting, so we had that conversation that Melanie brought up about TCS training and strategy for rolling that out moving forward. So let's just pin that on old business too, and we can address it, as there's more information.
outs of our great arts departments. The Music in Our Schools Month has been going on, the band concert. I think we could have had a board meeting, there were enough of us there. But it was great. It was a full auditorium. You know, we really enjoyed all of the levels, you know, from the 6th grade right up through the high school. They did a great job. So I don't want us to overlook them in all of our appreciation of the arts and music programs going on in our schools. They're fantastic.
Well, I suggest we end on a high note. So motion to adjourn?
Second.
Pete? Second, Jackie? All in favor? Aye.